Hi YouTube, Brian here. So at the request of my friend Terry, she wanted a little tutorial on repotting Phalaenopsis orchids. So this is just a quick rundown on what you should be looking for and how you should be proceeding. Supplies you'll need will be a Phalaenopsis orchid that's in need of repotting. This one, it's probably been a year and a half since it's been done, so it's definitely due. For my method, I really do like some nice long fiber sphagnum moss. This tends to be one of the easiest things to grow them in here. I'm in the Pacific Northwest. It should work in most areas. Some people who complain that it holds too much water, those are usually people that really like to water. When they're planted in nice sphagnum moss, good quality, honestly, you might not need to water them more than a couple times a month, potentially. You need to let them use up the moisture that's in the pot. Definitely make sure you spring for some of the good quality mix. I find some of the substandard, cheaper sphagnum moss that's out there is really quite water retentive. It's sticky and slimy and very heavy when it gets damp. This stuff is nice and springy and bouncy. Works really well for getting around the roots, holding moisture, but not getting really compacted. It still holds a nice amount of air. So, what we'll do is we'll take the plant out of the pot, assess its root system, and then we'll get started on repotting depending on what size pot we need to put it back into. Alright, so we'll take the plant out of the pot here. You can see not a huge root system. This plant has just been sitting on a light cart for a little while, but it does have a few nice healthy roots. You can see this old moss is not too compacted, which is nice, but this is still in the moss that it came from the nursery in. So what you'll notice is this outer layer sort of peels away because all they've done is taken a plant out of a plug tray, popped it into a small pot with some moss wrapped around, and then they've taken the small pot, wrapped some more moss around it, and put it into a slightly bigger pot. So with these ones, I definitely like to get well into the middle here. You need to be firm but gentle with it. Don't want to rip off the roots or snap the crown or anything like that. Gently peel away any roots that have completely disintegrated. You can just gently pull off. Slowly work your fingers up into the middle here. Once we've got that all cleaned out, we'll see that this plant isn't going to be going up a size at all. It doesn't have a huge root system. So any sections that are brown and squishy, you can slide away. You can leave some of that little, there's a fine core in the center of each root. I think you can maybe see it here. You can leave that. It can be helpful for anchoring, especially if you have very few roots. Also, if there's a dead part in the middle of a root and then a live part at the end, you can sort of pull away the dead material in the middle, and the live part will keep growing just through that little sort of hard core that's in the middle. So, speaking with our local Phalaenopsis guru, Pat from Kingfisher Orchids, he says that the more roots you can keep on one of these, the more leaves you can keep, so the healthier your plant's going to be. So you always try and make sure that you're repotting frequently enough that you're not losing roots due to stagnant acidic media. Get in there. I do like to go right up into the very center here and just make sure there aren't any little dead areas. Sometimes there's a little piece in there right in the very center crown and a bunch of dead roots out past it. If you sort of go in and snap that little bit away, you can get rid of a bunch of dead roots at once. So there we go. That's cleaned up now. We'll discard the old media. Now, I'm going to plant it just a little touch deeper so that these roots that are coming out at the surface can be into the potting mix. As I said, I'm not going to be going up a size with this just because the root system doesn't need it. In honesty, it could probably go down a size for most people, I have a habit of forgetting to water this one, so I'm going to go with a little bit bigger of a pot than it needs, just so that I don't have any trouble with it drying out. Now, just like we had with some of the other plants that I've shown repotting on, I don't want to take this moss, jam it around the outside and sort of tuck it into the pot. I want to make sure that these roots are out near the outside of the pot, because that's where it tends to dry a little faster and has a little bit more airflow. So what I'll often do with these is take a little bit of the moss, make just a little loose ball with it, go up into the center of the plant here, just so that you're not compressing those roots down into the middle. Gently nestle the plant into the pot. As I said, I'm going to go just a touch deeper so that those new roots that are just emerging are going to be touching the potting mix. And then I'll just take small amounts of the fresh mix here and just gently tuck around. With a Phalaenopsis that's just in moss, you want to be able to, when you're finished, pick the plant up by the leaves and not have it come out of the pot. You don't want to jam it in too tightly. That can tend to suffocate roots and cause problems with watering, but you do want it, as some people would say, about 60% packed in there. If you get a plant from the grocery store or the florist that has really, really tight moss, the reason they do that is so that they can hire unskilled labor for watering. What they'll do is pack the plant in moss really, really tight. They leave just a little space around the top collar of the pot here that holds enough water just to soak down into the tightly packed moss below. What they'll do is have someone go through and say, okay, it's time to water this greenhouse. Go through, fill each pot up to the rim. Whatever water the pot holds is exactly what it sort of needs to percolate through into the bottom, and anyone can then water the plant. What they forget to tell most of the people who are growing them at home is that with that method, you might only be watering your plant every month. I had one in our office that was in bloom and doing beautifully for 5 months, and I only watered it twice because that moss held a lot of water down into the center. So with a plant like this, it should dry fairly evenly still, because it's not packed super tight, but it's not really loose, open, airy moss. And you will still probably need to water it potentially once every week to 2 weeks. So Terry, I hope that's helpful and gives you some ideas. Take care.